I am delighted to be here, joined by Peter Sisseck, who is in the Ribera del Duero as we speak, to talk about Sci, Floor, and Pingus 2019. That we will be. It's the wrong way around in a way because we will be tasting on Monday.
Mhm.
But Peter, tell us a little bit about the Ribera and your Ribera wines in 2019.
So yeah, the big challenge was, as it was in Bordeaux, was the extreme drought that we had. It was a very dry winter, so we rely on 89% of all our rain falls in the winter time. So if we don't get that, then it's pretty much uphill. And unfortunately, we didn't get too much rain, so everything looked a bit dreary. But more the landscape around seemed to suffer, but the vineyards uh, looked good. And again, it's now the 25th vintage, basically, that we did 19. So we've been at this for many years, and of course we have since 2000 been doing a lot of work on the biodynamic part, which basically is a very effective way of potentiating the roots, basically. And so it seems that our vineyards are very good at coping with weathers like this that are complicated. So we were able to harvest what I would call perfectly ripe grapes very early on. We were again one of the first bodegas in the region to harvest, and not just because we like to harvest early, but actually because our grapes were ripe, and there was absolutely no reason to wait for that. So Pingus was picked again over 3 or 4 days, spread out a bit. So that was a week between the first stuff that we harvested and the last stuff we harvested of Pingus. Then of course Flor de Pingus, which is 35 hectares, spread out all over the village. Just the physical time of taking it. I mean, it takes so I think we did the whole harvest in around 10 days. I'm very happy with the results. Likewise with the PSI that we where we of course buy our grapes. So it's much more a puzzle. We harvest from around 250 hectares, spread out over more than 20 villages, and so around 700 plots. So it's sort of a bit of a logistic nightmare, but we've been also trying that a couple of times now, so we're getting good at it also. So, but that is still the big thing, this whole logistic. But we are now more over the time. We've got to learn the vineyards and the areas much better than we did in the beginning, and we are now down to I think almost 60-70% are growers that we have been using before. So we know their vineyards, we know exactly. So everything is coming more in-house, if you could say that. We've started to rent some vineyards, and so we're actually cultivating almost 40 hectares on our own, which is, again, we have to redo everything, and we now have our own equipment and our own tractors and stuff. So it's exciting. It's really exciting. And the wines are, yeah, you will see when you taste them, they are really something outstanding. And I don't know exactly what's happening, it's just like, I would say that since the big change in Pingus and Flor de Pingus came after the 9 and 10 and 11 vintages that were the first warm years, you can say, and warm to a sense, to a degree that we start thinking about what's going on, and adjusting the way that we grow and we cultivate our grapes. So also the whole barrel regime has been changed, so we don't use so much new wood anymore. For Pingus, we don't use any new wood at all. For Pingus, no, for Flor de Pingus, we're down to 30%. Of course, for PSI, we use big wooden tanks, and we now have more or less the quantity of wooden tanks that we need. So they are over time also becoming better because they're quite aggressive when they're young. They're quite tannic, and so it takes some time to break them in. But so we sort of more or less we've finished that part of buying enough tanks. So yeah, it's really exciting. And I had a tasting 2 days ago here in Ribera with my people, and we were just loving the 19. It's really something very special. You'll see when you taste the wines. Flor de Pingus is I mean, we've never had tannins in that league. It's just amazing, and how fresh and wonderful it is. And the Pingus, because the aging has now changed, so instead of bringing Pingus up in barrels, we also bring it up in tank. So the assemblage of these two things, of course, the tank aged one is slightly younger and less evolved. So when you blend the two things together, it takes some time. It's a bit more grippy, the tannins. But if you leave it in the glass, and I can recommend you that, or even open them up, the bottles, and taste them after some time, because the Pingus needs a bit of time to settle down because of this élevage thing we have. But again, it is also incredible. The length, the sense of tannin, and the quality of the tannins that we have is something we have never had before. So it is really exciting times for what we've been doing. And I think since, yeah, I mean, 12 was great vintage. 13 was, of course, complicated for many reasons, also personally. The 14, we got 100 points from the 12, 100 points from 14, 100 points for the 16. 17, probably not 100 points because we had the frost and all that, but still it's a nice vintage. But the 18 and 19, they all have the potential of 100 points. It's really exciting. I never had such a run of excellent wines as we have right now. So it is nice. Also frustrating because of the situation of the COVID and all that. But it seems that we are over the worst, at least the first part of the worst. So let's see if things are clearing up a bit, and you can get a more precise view of how things will evolve. It has been pretty frustrating the last 2 months because we knew that we had this wonderful wine, and we didn't really know how we're going to sell it, and we still are talking to our agents all over the world and our colleagues, because I really see this as a collaboration. I think it's very important to understand that winemaking and selling wine and us making it is a collaboration. We would never be able to exist without you, and vice versa, of course. But I think we should all agree that we are here for the long term, and we want to understand each other and help each other the best way we can. I think this is very important.
Absolutely, and I don't think any project shows more commitment to the long term of, well, the region, not just your wines, but than SAI. And I think and I have to say, you're talking about those wines. I'm not sure I'm going to let the team wait till Monday. I think I might taste them this afternoon. But no, talking very briefly about SAI. So have you continued, which I think you started in 12, to put a little sort of 10% or so of Garnacha?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Garnacha. Even we are now, for Flor de Pingus, there's actually, but it's tiny amount still. So probably a couple of percent in Flor de Pingus that has a bit of Grenache. And we have recently been doing some replantations and plantation of new plants. And we're adding a bit of Grenache to that as well. I think it really helps to fresh up the wine. I think Tempranillo can often be overly tannic, and we have to be very careful about that. And it just seems that the Grenache is less tannic, has a lower pH also, so it also helps the wine to be better balanced. So I think it's really nice it is in the very few wine areas in the world where such a thing as a single grape variety is. Of course, we talk about now today Burgundy with the Pinot Noir, and to a certain extent Nebbiolo in Barolo, and even Brunello. But when you really look at these things historically, it is not true that they were monovarietal. There was always a blend of other things in it. Even to that extent that Carlemagno, the big European king, if you can say that, emperor, he hated the Gamay grapes so much, so he actually asked all the Gamay to be pulled out of the great vineyards of Burgundy. So there's always been a blend of other stuff, and I think we should understand that this idea of monovarietal thing is not necessarily something of good. So by blending with small amounts of other stuff, I think you make much better balance points, and I think it's important.
Absolutely, and also it means, I think, or I've certainly found, that SAI does exactly what I think you wanted to do from the off, is that yes, you can keep it if people want to, but it hits the ground running, as Adam Brett Smith, our leader, would say.
Exactly.
And it's important that it does that, because it's not a wine about, not to say that others are, but a wine about pretension. It's a wine about portraying the region and being drinkable from the off.
Yeah, absolutely. And you will see that the 19 is the best example we have of that. Of any of the vintages we made, this is absolutely, it had such a wonderful tannin structure, and it is very drinkable right now. You will see that.
That's brilliant. And sort of finally, Peter, there again, because we have customers who've followed, who we've been fortunate enough to have followed both of our joint journeys from the beginning. Are there particular sort of, maybe an older vintage and a younger vintage of Flora and Pingus rather, that people should sort of be looking at trying and drinking now if they've got a run of vintages? Yeah.
Again, we mentioned before, talking about what we talked about, the 12. I think the 12 is very much a vintage that is, at least for Flora de Pingus, is really drinkable. Very, very also for SAI. SAI, I'm drinking the 14. Which is really nice right now. Pingus, you can start looking at 10 on Pingus. It's really interesting right now. Of course, the 8 is really good, and I would say and it's a perfectly ripe Pingus now. So but and then, of course, any vintage, basically. I mean, even the 95 is still showing quite well if you can dig up a bottle somewhere.
It's a rare beast.
Yeah. So I don't think we really have any vintage. Maybe 97, 98. Depending a bit on how the wine has been stored.
Always
sometimes
crucial.
I've had sometimes 98. I'm a bit tired, but the rest all seem to be drinking very, very well.
That's absolutely brilliant, Peter. And I think next time that we have a chat, we might be chatting about a project that I know you have for arguably the greatest white wine in Spain, but that will be a rather different setup, but we have that to taste as well. But I look forward to tasting these very much.
Wonderful.
And thank you very much for your time. And
you have the sample of the Fino, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll tell you, this is the bottling. It's not just a barrel sample. It is the bottling. So we because of the COVID-19 trouble, we were going to bottle 10,000 bottles of this wine, but because we didn't really know how things were looking, and Fino is a moment. You really have to catch a moment where humidity, everything, where the flow is really strong and everything really. So I got a bit scared. So we only bottled 1,500 bottles instead of 10,000. So it will be sort of a symbolic bottling. The moment was the right moment to do it, but I was afraid that and also it was really complicated. We had to do it by hand and everything. So it's hand bottled. It's very sophisticated. But it's a wonderful wine, and I really hope you enjoy it. I'm very proud of what we achieved with this wine.
Well, that's brilliant, and we look forward to telling customers more and more about that when we do something on that a little bit later in the year. But Peter, thank you so much for your time. It's very, very kind. And all the best to all of your team from all the Corning Barrel offices.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay.